Scales. They are so important in any instrument, but how do we go about practicing them? In this lesson, I'm going to give you 5 different points and different tips of ways you can practice your scales, which means you're practicing them in a more of a holistic, rounded way. So this isn't about how to play scales. I've made separate videos on those. This is just practicing tips and effective ways that you could play them that's going to really benefit you in other aspects of your playing. So come with me to the piano and I'm going to break this down into 5 different components, and then by the end hopefully you'll feel more confident about your scale practice sessions. So first we'll just go over like technicality. So you need to make sure your wrists are fairly raised, you're sat a good distance away from the piano, that you're not sat too low. So if you're sat too low, it will encourage your wrists to go down and be heavy and you won't be able to play nice and lightly. So make sure your fingernails are pretty short, like very short, so you can play on the tips of your fingers. I'll just use lots of different scales in this video. Let's start with B major. So the aim is to play lightly with your fingers, so not like this. Not with a slumped finger, which will encourage you to like hold extra notes down so it has less clarity. So we don't want this. So you need to raise your wrists, play more on your fingertips and move your fingers. You can see I'm only pressing or touching one key at a time. So the other aim is to make sure that you play nice and evenly, so even in speed and even in tone to begin with, and that your hands are nicely in sync with each other. It's important that you get a grasp on the specific finger pattern for each scale, for each hand as well. And it's so important that you stick to this finger pattern, because what we're trying to do is develop muscle memory for a particular set of notes. So when you go to play a piece of music and it's in a certain key signature, your fingers have already developed that memory around a particular set or a pattern of notes, and you should hopefully automatically do certain fingers so it becomes a little bit more natural and instinctive to play. So that's the general technicality. Let's go on to the next thing, which is direction. That means you could practice hands separately, 2 octaves at a time, at least 2 octaves at a time. You could play what's called in similar motions. The hands are going the same direction. You could play in contrary motion, where the hands are going in opposite direction. So this can be quite tricky, particularly when it's completely asymmetrical. That went out of shot at the end. You could try 2 octaves apart in similar motion, and then the right hand, whilst the left hand is still going up, the right hand can come back down, so you end it in contrary motion. So this is quite a fun one. So start 2 octaves apart, so change in direction instead of just doing one direction outwards or in similar. Changing direction is really good practice as well, so you can have a play around with that. So on to the next point, rhythm and articulation. Instead of just playing everything how I've just been playing them scales so far in what you call straight rhythm, you could try varying the rhythm. I get many of my students to play in swing rhythm. So instead of playing in straight, where all the notes are nice and even, which you should also practice as well, we're going to do the Hump-ty Dump-ty rhythm. So long, short, 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 long. could also try accenting certain notes, doing some odd accents and some nice even, like more natural sounding accents. You could accent every 4 notes, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. You could try accenting every 3. Which was a little bit strange at the end. You could try accenting every 5. And just have a play around with different accents. The other thing is articulation. So far I've played everything legato, so joining all the notes together and playing nice and smooth. And whilst that is obviously important, you could try playing staccato. So let's try, so you want little bounces. So the aim with staccato is to use the same fingers as you would playing the scale legato. You could try slurred couplets, so like a slur and then off, slurred dot, or like join dot. Just gets you thinking more about how it's played musically, because that's more how you're going to be playing notes with a more varied articulation within an actual piece of music. You could also try as well playing legato in one hand and staccato in the other, and then swapping. So another thing you could implement is the metronome. So here is my mini metronome. Set it to a speed that you can keep to if you don't have a good natural steady pulse, and then this should help you keep in time. If I set my metronome, this is at 80, so what I'm going to try is playing every note per tick. What you can try is playing 2 notes per tick. And then, if you feel like you know the scale well, you can try every 4 notes per tick. Find a tempo if you have to go a bit slower. That means you can practice varying your note values and making sure they're all staying relative. So an 8th note is always double the speed of a quarter note, a 16th note is always double the speed of an 8th note. So the next point is theory. So I like my students to practice in key signatures. So this will be about 2 scales per key signature. The 2 scales that belong to one key signature, the major and minor. So for example, C major and A minor, this is A natural minor, they are relative to each other. I think it's good to practice scales in pairs. So you're thinking of a major and minor per 1 key signature. So you could try, for example, playing the major followed by the relative minor. If you don't already know, the relative minor starts from the 6th note of the major scale. If we take B flat major, and then the relative minor is G minor. Another thing you could try practicing is from the major into the parallel minor. So for example, F sharp major, into F sharp minor, so we flatten the 3rd, 6th and the 7th. And then to turn it into the harmonic minor, we sharpen the 7th. So that's another way as well, so major into its parallel minor. Instead of practicing in the circle of fifths, so practicing no sharps, 1 sharp, 2 sharps, 3 sharps, 4 sharps, etc. Try practicing them chromatically, because then you get a mixture of the easier scales and the trickier scales that generally start on the black keys. So you could start from anywhere you want. We could start from G. You could do major, minor, major, minor, for example. Again, there's lots of different ways you can mix it up. So let's play G major. We'll just do 1 octave. So the next one's going to be a minor. So we're going to play G sharp minor. The next one's going to be a major. So we have A major. The next one is B flat. So this is going to be B flat minor. The next one's going to be B, so B major. So these are lots of different ways to test your theory knowledge whilst practicing scales as well. Because obviously scales are useful for your dexterity, knowing the key signatures, but being able to link them and know the relative majors and minors, how to turn them into parallel majors and minors is a really good exercise as well, theoretically. So the last thing is expression. So once you can play a scale fairly comfortably with nice even tone, nice even speed, it's consistent, and your fingers know exactly what they're doing, we can then start to make them sound a little bit more musical. So I guess the most common way to play them expressively is crescendo and then a diminuendo. So as you get higher up the keys, you gradually get a little bit louder, and as you come back down, you gradually get a little bit softer. So crescendo and then a diminuendo. You could also play around with slight variation in speed as well, but a slight accelerando, so where you accelerate a little bit, and then rall or rallentando, so slow down a little bit at the end. So adding some musical expression. Just as an example, I would recommend only practicing around 3 key signatures per day. So they could just be random, or you could do it methodically. So you could say, right, I'm going to practice B flat, the scales that have just B flat, so F major and D minor. Then I'm going to practice 4 sharps, so C sharp minor and E major. Then I'm going to practice 6 flats, so G flat major and E flat minor. So it's up to you, and you can keep a record as well of which ones you have practiced and then just sort of have them all on a rotation. So I hope that was useful. Again, as a piano teacher, scales is something that I feel is really, really important and shouldn't be avoided for so many reasons. So I hope you're practicing your scales, or at least I hope that this has inspired you to practice your scales, get learning them, experiment playing them in different ways so they're not too boring. But you do need to be disciplined, you do have to be a little bit diligent, but it doesn't have to be a chore. So I'll see you in the next lesson. So that's the end of this video. If you would like to leave a request, leave them in the comments section below of this video. I've also left some videos here that I think you might like, so go and check those out as well. I also have a course. Visit bitesizepianocourse.co.uk and you can enroll and start learning how to read music. I'll see you in the next video.